we're here doing the PEM podcast, and PEM is Pragmatic Ego Management. And what this is about is, from my experience in the psychedelic treatment world and sort of a psychonaut in my younger years, the issue that seems to arise again and again is this idea of ego, which ego can have several different definitions, and that's actually a very lengthy conversation because nailing it down is difficult. So we're not necessarily talking about the Freudian or, getting into Carl Jung or their definition. Some people would say, well, you need an ego to survive, to be able to differentiate yourself from the world around you. Those aren't the definitions I'm looking for. We're talking about the idea of a personality trait or a set of thoughts and emotions that lead towards someone being very self-centered, this self-importance idea, and this mentality is one of constant competition. And there's a facade here, this fake self that leads to more and more division amongst people and conflict and unhappiness and disharmony. So we're going to get more and more into that so I can try to flesh it out more. But it really takes stories. It takes pointing to it. We have to kind of beat around the bush to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So that's ego. And really what I'm about, and I'm Worthington, what I'm here to talk about is mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and relationships are going to be extremely important with that. And we're going to be taking some looks at what women are saying these days, and men and women, and breaking this down from the lens of ego management and root fundamentals. You're going to hear me talk about root fundamentals over and over again. So I'm always looking at whatever concept that we're taking into consideration from the mindset of a tree. If I want to know what's going on with that tree, then I look at the roots. I don't look at the leaves and the fruit. I go to the source of the issue and start there before I start to branch out and figure out more of the complexity of that tree. And that's the analogy we're going to be using. The only analogy that's outside of that is when we talk about awareness. And awareness is talked about in using the allegory of mountains. That'll be something that'll come up at some point. So yeah, that's what PEM is about. There's a lot more to it. There's some interesting ideas that come from northern Mexican shamanic traditions that have to do with a bit of trickery and something they sort of talk about stalking. Some of you may actually be familiar with Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the book The Four Agreements, which is a big success, famous book. And his son also did some books, and that starts to venture into some of that those ideas there. First, you have to stalk the self, and that's mostly what their books are about, is really about the self. They're not talking about dealing with difficult personalities and how you manage them, because that's actually at a advanced level. First, you have to start with your own self and start to manage your own ego. So, that's what we're here to do. We're going to be taking a look at a video here and doing some reactions, and that's it. So there'll be a lot of fundamentals we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about what the fundamentals to love are, what the fundamentals are to mental health and health in general, and what's leading to a lot of today's societal issues on a global scale. And some of my perspectives on this are probably going to be very different from what you hear. My feeling is that people jump into whatever the topic is midway through what I call the snapshot of the movie. And you'll find that when you argue with women, they love to do this a lot too. They don't like to go to the very beginning. Not to sound that I'm gender biased or anything, but women tend to argue a certain way. If you've got a girlfriend or wife at home, I'm sure you notice it's very difficult to win an argument because they won't do it in a chronological format. So they'll start in the middle, take a snapshot and see, well, you're always this way and this is how you do things. And it's like, well, there was more to that story. And you always kind of get stuck in the middle of the timeline instead of at the beginning. And I see that happening a lot when people discuss issues that are creating disharmony in our world or creating challenges for people. They'll jump into the middle instead of starting at the very root foundation of what the issue is. And it changes things quite a lot when you start there. So yeah, that's the introduction of what we're about.
If she's going out, it's a deal breaker for me.
Huge red flags.
That for me, it's a deal breaker.
I totally agree.
Why is that a deal breaker? Is it because it makes you insecure?
It has nothing to do with insecurity. This is a dream world hypothetical scenario. Girls really don't be hitting up guys like this. Would you be okay with your long-term monogamous partner going to a nightclub, bar, or party type environment where throughout the course of the night, he's going to get approached, flirted with, and sexually pursued by numerous attractive women, some of which are more attractive than you and could potentially be a better partner than you, and these women are buying him drinks, getting him drunk, and enthusiastically want to sleep with him that night and steal him away from you? You're going to tell me you'd be okay with that?
No, not with that.
Here's the rule. What's happened societally is that there was, in fact, a double standard for men and women. And the double standard, in some cases, is justified because men are different than women. Not every double standard is justified. Men are not. Some double standards are justified because men, particularly with regard to sex, are very different than women in terms of what they want, in terms of what they are pursuing, in terms of what it means to them. However, what we have now done is we have basically reversed this so that the double standard now applies counter-logically in many of these circumstances. So, again, there was supposed to be no double standard, right? But you can see the double standard still applies.
So I'm going to stop it there. So he's saying in some cases because of gender that double standards are all right. I'm not sure what specifically he's talking about, but I'm not going to usually endorse that. I would have to hear more of what he's saying, but I feel like, whatever you dish out, you got to be able to take. And so double standard idea, we'll see what he means further. And there's some stuff coming up here about, someone going out to a nightclub, whether it's a woman or a man, and obviously they're going to be approached. They're in the meat market, so to speak, there, dating world, and in this nightclub where there's drinking and people getting loose and dancing and a lot of people approaching each other. And so the idea here is, what do you do? Not allow your partner, significant other, to go out without you there. And this gentleman here said it had nothing to do with insecurity. The issue I have with this is that we're missing a root fundamental that isn't being talked about here, and so that's again what I'm about. The root fundamental here has to do with the concept of love, and there are three root fundamentals when it comes to love, and they are in order. And so when you think love, think PCP. Sort of a joke. It's the poet's root, the compass root, and the parent's root. It's the compass root that comes to light here that is liberation. True, authentic love neither controls nor confines. It only liberates. And this is going to constantly bring up a paradox when we talk about monogamy. It's going to create issues. And this is why, a great sex therapist and couples therapist like Esther Perel will talk about managing the paradox. Because as you try to secure your partner further and control them and, get that sense of comfort out of your relationship, knowing that they're not going anywhere else, if you give it enough time, your sexual passion is going to die in the bedroom. So, okay, yeah, let's see what else he's got to say.
Well, it's just reversed. So men would say, listen, I don't want my girlfriend going to clubs all the time, but I want to go to clubs all the time. And women say, that's not fair. That's not okay. Right. Either we all go to clubs or nobody goes to clubs. I believe in magic! And so as a social conservative, I'm on the side of nobody goes to clubs. But if you're going to hold the standard that everybody goes to clubs, you can't.
Nobody goes to clubs, so we're not going to have any fun. We're going to have this monogamous relationship, and that's what's important here. And let's not go have any fun now, because that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna sacrifice fun for this relationship. Okay, that's one way you could approach it, but it sounds rough. So let's see what else.
Then complain about your boyfriend going to clubs while saying that you get to go to clubs, and this is supposed to be some sort of fairness. It makes no sense, obviously.
Who controls access to sex, men or women?
Women. Yeah, woman. Woman, obviously.
Yeah, clearly. That part is true.
Yeah, so I would say hookup culture, if we want to see hookup culture stop, because women kind of control when sex happens. So do you have anyone to blame but yourselves?
So he wants to blame women, and okay, I disagree. You're doing exactly what I'm talking about. You've jumped out onto the leaves of the issue here. You're nowhere near the roots. And this is the one that people are not going to like. and it's the fact that as a species, we are not monogamous. It's clear if we had an alien species come down and didn't speak our language and only came to observe human behavior, and they decided to, try and categorize our format of sexual interaction, it'd be obvious we are non-monogamous. So when we're trying to make a monogamous relationship work, which I'm not advocating that you should never attempt that, you're going to have to approach it from a certain perspective. And so he wants to blame women for creating hookup culture, and it's not what's creating hookup culture. It's the fact that we're not monogamous, and now we've lost certain religious and cultural holds on our society, and so people are kind of doing what they want. And this all happened, of course, in the 60s and the sexual revolution, women's liberation movement, and civil rights movement, and all the social upheaval of that time. So I disagree with this gentleman here. Let's see what else he has to say.
On that one, thoughts?
So these women don't have enough information to argue
Okay.
that.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's deafening silence. That is correct. By the way, that's obviously true. It is obviously true that if you wish to have a less promiscuous...
So this is where it gets interesting with fundamental roots. What he's saying is it's true that women are the ones perpetuating hookup culture. We're going to use that term, and it's really their fault. And that's not untrue, because as they established, women do control sexual access. That part is 100% true. And yet it's misleading because we're missing a fundamental root. And as I said, the fundamental root here is that Homo sapiens are clearly not monogamous species. Anyway, let's hear more.
Society. And if you wish for people to hook up less, that the people who are, unless you're assuming that men are aggressively raping or sexually abusing women, then if women are the gatekeepers, then yes, I mean, there is some responsibility. In fact, the majority of the responsibility that is going to lie with women to make those decisions. And look, the general rule of human life, things you're not allowed to say anymore, general rule of human life. When it comes to sex, women need a reason. Men just need a time and a place.
Women have been oppressed since the beginning of time.
How?
And it's natural.
How?
Are you really? How?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're going to start talking about patriarchy is what's going to happen here, and at least a little bit. That's the hint that woman's leading to there. And here's the big reveal: women are complicit in patriarchy. They helped create it. This goes to other fundamental roots that have to do with the emergence of agricultural societies that then led to inheritance and the dominant format of legacy being handed down to next generation was through the male side. But women are complicit in creating that, and that's the big problem I have with some of the feminist movement. In that, to me, women in that, not all of them, let's say, but some of the more aggressive women in that movement are attempting to create female-dominated patriarchy, not actual matriarchy. And if you want to understand what the difference is there, then you need to kind of look at monkeys and apes, look at primates, and look at the difference between chimpanzees and bonobos. We can discuss that more. But yeah, women are complicit in the patriarchal situation.
How? You're
the one
asking
saying
me
this is
how?
true. Yes.
No, women were oppressed in history, but so were men. It's
How?
not.
Not as much as women
now
were.
this is interesting, because if I say, how were women oppressed? You're like, well, it's self-evident, Brian. I shouldn't have to educate you. Yet you've just asked me the same question. Shouldn't you know?
No, because that wasn't taught in school.
Ah, so isn't that interesting? Male oppression was never taught in school. Female's oppression was. Isn't that interesting?
Seems
so who's
biased.
really oppressed then?
Oh my God, Brian.
Perhaps you don't even believe men are oppressed.
Don't, to be honest.
You don't.
Yeah.
Now, again, they're sort of speaking two different languages here, right? He is saying that an enormous amount, in fact, the majority of oppression that has happened in human history has been men oppressing other men, which is really true. I mean, if you're talking about war, or if you're talking about enslavement, which disproportionately fell on young males, then yes, I mean, men are disproportionately oppressed. What she is talking about is presumably the idea that men are more powerful in society than women for thousands of years, which is a different form of oppression. But the point that he's making more generally is that all human beings have been oppressed by other human beings over the course of time. And so if you want to talk about a specific type of oppression, maybe you ought to get specifics, and then we can talk about what oppression looks like, or whether what you're just talking about are sexual differences that are natural. Because there are many women nowadays who will say that marriage is oppression, which is the stupidest concept known to man.
Marriage is what brings us together today.
Considering that marriage disproportionately benefits women.
Would you describe yourself as a feminist?
Yes.
Do you believe in gender equality?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so how do you reconcile believing in gender equality, but also holding men to their traditional gender role?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was hinting towards, and he's doing a good job of leading her in this direction. Is that whenever you get these social movements, they claim that they want equality and egalitarian environment, and there's perhaps a good percentage of the population of that movement that does want that, and then there is a more extreme portions of those movements that are not looking for equality. They're looking to usurp power. They're looking for a power grab. And so, yeah, it seems like that's what we're talking about here.
Of paying for the first date.
Well, I'm just saying that's my personal view. A woman being a feminist is just doing whatever you want to do and not being bashed by society for that. And
now there's a problem with that. Doing whatever you want to do and not being bashed by society. It's a very vague statement. So what does that mean? I can just go and murder someone. I can go rape people. I can steal from them. I can commit paternity fraud. I can divorce a man and lie about whatever he's done, perhaps even say that there was physical abuse when there was none. Where does this, she's not being specific enough, and that's a big problem, because we can't just do whatever we want. That isn't the world we live in. All right, there's definitely boundaries here, and she just wants to be able to do whatever the hell she wants. Let's see.
And obviously, standing up for women's rights and stuff like that. But
this is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Is through yes in society, fixing that, and through
now just that little emoji that came out and that little thing that happened there. I don't. She's not doing a great job of speaking her case here. She's not. She doesn't have a lot of the data. She's not able to back up her arguments. She's saying vague statements. Her logic has some holes at the moment because she doesn't seem to have enough education in that department. That okay, fair enough. But then when you put that emoji in there and you do this kind of tone, and this is where the ego management comes in. This tone is one of shaming and putting her down. I'm not for any of that, because see, I am looking for egalitarian. I am looking for that. So, that flavor creates more of an adversarial condition here, and that isn't going to serve us. All right, you want to start having a better dating world where people come together and we have a more rewarding sex lives as a whole, as a community, as a society. We need to get away from that. So let's not put her down. Yeah, okay, I don't think her education is where it needs to be, and she's probably a little entitled and has some issues there. But approaching her with that is not what PEM is about, honestly. That's where the ego management and the stalking comes in, of allowing her to kind of, let her talk herself into the ground where she makes some errors, and then find a way for her to realize, the mistakes in what she's saying, and do it in a way that doesn't shame her or put her in a box where what's going to happen is now you're going to polarize this further. So now women that see that emoji and get the flavor of this, this reaction video here, now you polarize them, and they're like, screw Ben Shapiro and screw these men, and they're all just these fascist men that are anti-feminists and have this. You see how that goes? That goes into that polarization. You aren't bringing people together. So I disagree with that a little bit. Here we go.
The system, but yeah, I don't. Oh my God.
Yes, you mean that in your personal life you don't actually believe any of the things that you purport to believe, and that what women actually want is men who act like men? And they actually like many of the gender differences between men and women? And that all of the male feminists in the world can't get a date because women don't want to date them?
Today I feel gay.
Because they are losers and women are not interested in that? And they're not interested in that because that is not good procreative material?
You know what God said? It said he made the man and women. He made the man and women.
He actually said man, woman, and
gay.
them.
I'll pass on that. Thanks, though.
So.
No, he said
God said man, woman, and then. I don't think I've ever heard that. Now, I don't believe that any written text is actually the word of God. So it's written in human language, so it's clearly written by somebody, but I don't believe anywhere has it ever said man, woman, and them.
I created
Nice.
male and female created he them.
Stating
So
biological
them. So there's
facts to
them.
make
They
people
them.
No, the them refers to the men and the women.
Oh man. Oh God. Oh man.
No, but
But
he
man
said
is the
them,
gender
so
neutral
it's
word.
like they them.
Well, he's referring to both of them.
But he said them, so he's like saying man created men and women in them. So he
No, he said in the beginning God created man, both male and female created he them.
them.
These are the
Them.
types
So
of man.
While other
Yeah.
countries
Right.
are planning
Male and
to
female.
invade us with debating they them the whole thing.
When you refer to multiple people, you say them, right?
Or you could be referring to they thems.
It's English.
They thems don't exist.
So they've fallen victim here to the current culture, which is extremely modern. There's never been a time in history where there was this change of language in this way, and then we're referring in the plural to someone who is androgynous, I guess would be another term. So to say that some biblical reference or something from thousands of years ago relates to our current time period and the way we're using language is yeah, it's just someone who's not very educated. That's okay.
I hate to break it to
I've
you.
met some. It's crazy.
You've met very confused men and sometimes very confused women.
I hate to agree with my enemy Michael Knowles, but yes. By the way, in the Hebrew, it's Zachar u'nekeva bara utam. Yes, it's referring to the men and the women. It doesn't say he created male and female and them. It doesn't say that. I know. I can read Hebrew.
So you expect the girl to be loyal to you before on the first date?
That is probably the most attractive thing a girl could do.
So this is big point here, and I'm going to have to disagree with this guy right off the bat. So loyalty is something that's earned. It isn't given. And you're saying on the first date this woman should be loyal to you? She doesn't even know you. You could be a piece of shit for all we know. We don't know what kind of person you are. So you expect that from her, and in return, I'm assuming you're going to do the same thing. So if we're not going to have a double standard here, you're going to be just as loyal to this woman, and you have no idea who she is. She could be a shameless gold digger who's conniving and looking to commit paternity fraud and lie and sleep with your best friend. You don't know who she is. You don't know, and you won't know. My kind of basic time frame, and everything is particular to the specific circumstance, but I would say that it takes about 2 years to actually start to really see who someone is, and it can't be in a dry vacuum. 2 years. They need to be tested. They need to borrow some money and pay it back. They need to go through some tough situations, keep secrets to themselves, do some things to prove to you that they are worthy of loyalty. So I vehemently disagree with what he's saying here. And what he's talking about here, what it will do to you is it's going to cause you to commit and invest all your eggs in that one basket right away. And you see people doing this again and again, and what the results are terrible unless you're that one lottery winner, right? Character assessment takes time, it takes effort, and it takes the giving of power to another person. So what he's saying here is, it's absolutely wrong, actually. It's very bad advice. So let's see what else is going to say.
But it's not reciprocated.
Saying, I'm not seeing other guys right now. I'm just talking to you. That is probably the most attractive thing a girl could do or say.
I
That's not
can
value
guarantee
in
you that
his
on a
eyes.
first
True.
date. I can guarantee you that on a third. But I mean, on the first day, I'm still feeling it out.
Third date, way too soon. Yeah, this is the problem with monogamy. In a monogamous species, they would go through the courtship portion of their, finding their mate. And once that was done, that would be it for a monogamous species. And that's, again, why this is going to keep coming up. That isn't what we are. And because of that, it doesn't work that way. You don't know how the future is going to unfold. And now you've committed to someone who has a lot more power than you if you're the man. So the woman, she can actually commit and then call it off because she can walk out her front door if she's semi-attractive and get laid that day. If you're a man and you make this same commitment and now you've been with this one person for however long, and let's say you deleted your phone list and you don't have any dates lined up, it's going to take you a little time to get back online and get your needs met. So, 3 dates, 5 dates. I mean, to actually commit to someone and to decide that they really have the character that you can trust them with that amount of commitment level, it's going to take time. It's going to take way more than that.
Why? But why, though? It is amazing to watch single women who are not married and presumably not in long-term relationships talking about their successful dating strategies. Always fascinating to watch. You know, it's a really good way to find a monogamous partner is to date people who are dating monogamously. Isn't that amazing? That maybe
And yes, he's right there. So dating monogamously, that's your goal here. You want to be monogamous. That's what your intention is. So this is what I would say to you then. If that's fully the intention and you're so on board with monogamy that's where you're headed, then this is what I would say. Don't engage in physical sexual interaction while you're dating these people. And then don't date one. Date multiples. This is an interview process. This is a friendship process. At the end of the day, they're called a girlfriend, a boyfriend. They should be your friend. And from what I've seen, a lot of people, they don't, as you get to know them, they tend to not be great friends, right? Whether romantic or not. Like it takes a little while and you start to see, this person doesn't seem to have my best interest at heart. You just add sex into the situation. You decide, I'm just going to be monogamous. And now you're committed to this thing. You're putting yourself in a difficult position. To address monogamy, if you're going to go that route, do not engage in sexual behavior with these people. Go on dates, get to know them, refrain from sexual activity, and then you aren't necessarily not being non-monogamous. You're just interviewing people and getting to know them and developing friendships, and then you're going to make a decision at some future date. And again, it's going to take a little while. So in this case where you're going to be monogamous, you're going to have to show a little restraint. You're going to have to abstain. That is what you have to do here. So let's hear what he says.
you should, date the person you're dating and not 7 other people at the same time. Because that's a dumb strategy for actually achieving a monogamous partnership, if that is what you actually seek.
It's always going to affect my life. I can't take off my skin color. As a black woman, prejudices that exist against me don't exist against you, Brian. And that's why you can't be racist against a white person. So I'm sorry if you feel offended, but you are white, and me calling you white boy isn't exactly racist.
I mean, you are addressing me by my skin color. I consider
your skin color will never lead to the, premature murder of yourself. I don't know.
I would actually point out one thing to you. Me as a white man, I'm the only male at this table here. There are more white men killed by police officers than women of any race combined.
I mean, then why aren't you mad? Why don't you hate police too?
Because I realize that police are a necessary function of society.
Well, I'm a white man. I can tell you, I don't necessarily like police so much. I avoid them. I stay out of their way. So, they're a dangerous force in our society. And if you're smart, you don't have involvement with them. You just go about your business and you avoid that.
Without police, it would be chaos. We need police officers.
I mean, I think that's really easy to say as you, once again, I'll reiterate, a white person. And again, that's not to be racist.
So she's not very educated either. She should go to the DRC or something like this and go to another country and see what happens when you don't have the rule of law, and it doesn't matter what your skin color is. Democratic Republic of the Congo, pretty much all black, and you can get murdered very easily over there as a black person because laws are pretty much out the window. So yeah, she just doesn't. One of the things I'll say too about this, right? We have these women here who clearly are not that educated. They're young. I'm assuming young to mid 20s. Just don't have the experience to really respond to this interaction. And on the other side of that, hey, I guess that's what the dating pool is if you're that age, or even older guys. I've dated women still in their 20s sometimes, and you can't be dealing with that. But some of them are more educated. Some of them are at least a little have more maturity in certain areas. So, yeah.
The intersectional hierarchy strikes again. So if I have been discriminated against on the basis of my skin color, I can now discriminate against whomever I please. This is why you should not judge people based on quote-unquote status. Okay, status is cultic. When people say that I'm going to judge you based on your status, what they mean is that you have sort of a cult status in a hierarchy, and that we can now adjudicate whether your actions are right or wrong.
This is the problem with the feminist movement. This does start to be the problem with some of the racial movements going on. Again, that power grab that I talk about. Some of these ultra feminists will say, hey, that's fine to abuse a man. That's what men have abused us for so long, and we've been so oppressed or whatever that who cares what a man thinks? Who cares what a man goes through? The problem with this is, again, you're never going to achieve a cohesive society with that mentality. If you're one of these people on these extreme ends and you have these type of views, do you think that's going to lead to a society that is more cohesive and more healthy? It's not. That's when you want to look at the, probably the godfather of them all, the best example ever. Look at Nelson Mandela, right? Here's a man who was abused and his entire family put through unimaginable hell, tortured for 10 years, imprisoned falsely for 30, entire country destroyed by apartheid, millions of people raped, killed, murdered, and this man comes out, and what does he do? He doesn't have that attitude. He has an attitude of forgiveness and how are we going to bring the country together, because if we don't, it's going to be never-ending civil war, and he knew that, and that's why he made the choices he made. And if those of you who don't know the history of Nelson Mandela, you should look it up. So, these people that have this attitude on the far extremes of these arguments are not going to lead to a bringing together people, just leads to more division.
Based on your status in the hierarchy, that's almost a paganistic conception of what justice looks like. The justice is the same for everybody. If you are a black person who's racist against a white person, it doesn't make it less racist just because you have a quote-unquote different status.
That's true.
You're still being a racist.
I'm bending over backwards to not be racist right now.
This is ridiculous, but this is what we've now established, is that if you are a person in a non-power status in the hierarchy, then I guess you can be just as much of a terrible bigot as you want to be.
I've dated women who are doctors, I've dated attorneys, I've dated pharmacists, I've dated more nurses than I can count. Women's careers, to me, don't make them more attractive. Like, I'm not more attracted to a girl, oh, you're a doctor. Whereas I think a lot of women, a doctor would be a catch.
My wife is a doctor.
I don't give a if a woman's a doctor. I'll date a barista, I'll date a girl that works at Chick-fil-A, because men and women are looking for different things.
I would say that this is, again, one of the things you'll see me talk about a lot of times is not being black and white on things and exploring the grays in the world. A lot of times when people have a very black and white viewpoint of the world, in my mind, it's a juvenile approach to reality, and it's an immature approach to reality, because reality is very complex and it isn't black and white, it's grays. When we're talking about, do I find a woman who's a doctor more attractive than, say, the same woman who's not? If she is a doctor, it means that she put in enormous time, effort, sacrifice, and perseverance to achieve that. That is a feather in her cap. If you ask me, it does mean something on that side of character assessment. I'm assessing what can I depend on in this woman, and she's definitely bringing something to the table. So I disagree with him. He's right. It doesn't cause me to get aroused what her career is. That isn't causing a change in my attraction level at that physical level. But what we're talking about here, and what he's been talking about a lot, is monogamy, loyalty, these committed relationship things. And then what he's saying here is actually a little bit contradictory. Then it's actually contradicting his message a bit. So I want to point that out. So kind of interesting.
There's not always symmetry in what we find attractive. From a dating point of view, I'm not more attracted to a girl because of her career or because of her status or because of her earning potential.
I mean, sociologically speaking, he's exactly right. I mean, the sociological data proves this out. That women are definitely looking, when they get married, for earning potential and whether the man can provide for them.
I caught you a delicious bass.
Just a fact of life. And men typically do not. Now, can it be like a marginal increase in terms of attractiveness if a woman is doing a career that you find to be very cool? Like, obviously, my wife is a doctor, but that was not what made me love my wife. In fact, she didn't know she wanted to be a doctor when I met her.
So he's kind of pointing out the gray there just a little bit, a marginal increase in attractiveness. What he's not saying is that how this pertains to the character of this person, right? That's not what he's kind of leaving that out, but he is at least admitting there's something there.
She became a doctor after. That was more a symptom of the fact that she's very smart. I found her intelligence very attractive. And then it turns out she wanted to be a doctor. Again, men and women are, in fact, pursuing very, very different things. Now, with that said, it happens to be the case that people tend to marry people of similar IQ. So the lie that men marry women who are of a different IQ bracket or women marry men of a different IQ bracket, that actually is not true. There's a fair bit of intelligence sorting when it comes to marriage. Like does actually tend to marry like.
I think body count matters, so
I don't know if that's inherently entirely misogynistic, but that's kind of unpleasant to hear, that men's value is somehow based in other things.
We all make judgments, whether you guys want to admit it or not. We all make judgment calls when it comes to potential partners. In the same way, like most of you just said, like, I want to date a guy who's taller than me. That is a numerical measurement. You're making a value call, so to speak, based off of a guy's height. The fact of the matter is, a guy who's shorter than you could be a fantastic partner, loving, loyal, great person. But it happens to be you might not be attracted to men who are of a smaller stature than you.
I think I'm going to stay silent. I don't want to promote further discussion. Thank you.
I don't want to promote further discussion. Is always a great way
thing
of
to say on a talk
discussion.
show.
It's always awesome. By the way, I'll actually disagree with him that these are even akin. These are not akin. Okay, judgments based on height are arbitrary assignments of attractive value.
Lois, can I keep the little person, Peter?
No, that's too much work.
I don't think there's anything arbitrary to the idea that you would prefer to date or marry somebody who is not sexually promiscuous. That's a reflection of underlying values.
So I wanted to wait a little more. I was going to stop it right when I heard that word body count, and wanted to hear a little more where I was going with this. So first of all, there's several things here that are going on, root fundamentals that they're kind of glazing over without actually getting into the foundation of what's happening. So first of all, love. I told you there was 3 fundamental roots to love. The first one is called the poet's root, and what it points to is we don't choose who we love. We're not choosing who we're actually attracted to. So some people may have this list, and maybe height is a part of that list, or maybe the body count is a part of the negative list, that, you know, whatever it is. At the end of the day, when you if you've ever experienced true love and strong, crazy attraction for someone, none of that actually plays a role. It's an instantaneous chemical reaction within yourself in which you feel this way for somebody at an organic level. And the reason it's called the poet's root is because it points to something that's eternal. It points to something that's in a spiritual essence that has to do with that spiritual proximity, if you will, prior to being born, and that love continues after you die, that we aren't actually choosing it, that there's something or someone who is choosing for us. So we have these debates over people's characteristics and body count and height and, you know, bank account and loyalty, whatever it is. That's the character side. That actually isn't the side you fall in love with. What you fall in love with is a side that is beyond words, that we can't actually fully describe. And again, that's why it's the poet's root. That's why it's the artistic side of this. This is where it calls to the artist in people to try and point to something that's ineffable. So they're glazing over something there, and then they're kind of confusing two things. So, you know, this is the problem with dating, is you're looking for someone you have that really strong chemistry for, and that butterflies in your feeling in your stomach, and then you come to find out some things about their character, you know, the flaws. You find out something about their body count. We're going to talk about that too. So body count is going to point again to this issue of monogamy and how you should proceed. If you're going to proceed monogamously throughout your entire life, then yeah, you should abstain and not have any sex until marriage. I guess if you really are to follow that was the original teachings. That's the way it is. You know, the old Christians were doing it, and I think there's some problems with that, but that's fine. And what you're doing is you are engaging in serial monogamy. Serial monogamy, to me, is actually a very damaging activity to engage in. I'll probably say that for another video, why I see it so damaging. It's it creates a lot of division. I'll just say that here. That is an issue here with these fundamental roots that he's glazing over, and then mixing ideas together. So you don't really choose who you love, and yet you can choose where to place a boundary with someone based on their characteristics. And you got to keep that straight in your mind and understand what's going on. When you get presented with a paradox is when you fall in love with someone who is a difficult issue. All right, someone who has character flaws. So I always like to use this example, Jeffrey Dahmer's father, right? Here's a guy who was a monster. This guy was a monster mass murderer, did really strange things to people, bored holes in their head, poured acid in their brain, ate people, and yet his father loved him to the very end, and visited him every chance he got in prison. That's authentic love. That's the real deal. It's unfortunate that Dahmer had the issues he had, and that was the burden that his father carried. So, yeah, we're missing some things here. That it's too much of a flyover instead of getting into the actual root fundamentals.
that are going to have consequences for your marriage and for how you raise your kids. I mean, again, I don't think that there's anything inexplicable about the idea that men tend to be attracted more to women who have not slept with an extraordinary number of men.
So that is a programming. I don't feel that way. I actually am not at all affected by a woman's body count, but I am not programmed in this way. I don't falling victim to those cultural, religious programming that is out there in the world, the scripting. And it's important that he defines promiscuity, and he's not doing that. And this is another root fundamental that I think I'm not sure if this is a root fundamental, but it's at a deep level. There is a difference between non-monogamy and promiscuity, and of course that requires a definition. Some people are going to define non-monogamy as promiscuity right off the bat. The interesting thing is then they got to define monogamy. So if they're going to stick to serial monogamy and say that's monogamy, well, it really isn't. It's not actual monogamy. And most people get divorced, don't stay celibate. So he's again, it's too fast of a flyover. We're not really getting into the meat of this stuff. Promiscuity to me is somebody's attempt to fill an internal emotional, spiritual void with an external source, sexuality in this case, sexual content. It's the same as someone who's an obese person, someone who overfeeds themselves, someone who has a drug addiction. They are filling a void within themselves through external means, and that's what promiscuity is to me. He may define it differently, but that is my definition. I do see a vast difference between someone who is engaging in promiscuity and someone who is engaging in an aware non-monogamous lifestyle. So, maybe not even having multiple partners at the same time, but even seeing serial monogamy as really, it isn't monogamy. And so approaching it in a way that isn't feeding an endless void within oneself. And, I don't know if he's addressed that at all, if he has that as part of his thought process, but let's hear what's left.
Alrighty, folks. So it's worth watching the Whatever podcast if you wish to see sort of the state of modern feminism and what many young women actually believe about the world and what we've done as a culture to destroy the minds and the souls of so many young people. It's really disheartening. So there's that. Very depressing stuff.
So true.
So yeah, as you can see, look, he's got this polarized platform here where there's the good side and the bad side, the white hat, black hat. And that's what I'm disagreeing here with. I'm not taking either side, if you notice. I think those women didn't have well thought out arguments at all. They clearly actually had far less of a cohesive argument than Ben Shapiro did or the main gentleman there that was speaking. But at the same time, their arguments had flaws as well. They had not gotten to the root marrow of what's causing our social shifts and our division that we're experiencing. And I think he was adding more derisiveness to the conversation by shaming a little bit, pointing out kind of how stupid their arguments were, having a certain haughty attitude towards what he feels is ridiculous, instead of having a compassionate look at it and going here, treating people not in a condescending way, but sometimes treating people like children that need to be guided. That wasn't the feeling I got from him there. So I would like to see more of that, trying to guide people with a compassionate touch and go, yeah, you're off base. I don't think you're on the right track here, but let me help you see it in a different way and not in a derisive way that then there's other women who are watching the show right now who I guarantee you became furthermore polarized feminists instead of reaching a middle ground place and starting to go, okay, maybe I could think about this a little differently. I bet that didn't have that effect on a lot of women that were maybe willing to think about lessening their extreme perspective on feminism. He probably drove them further into it instead of bringing them more in his direction. And that's what I disagree with there. As I said before, I'm Worthington, and I'm affiliated with a group that's developing a website and eventual app called psychedelist.com. Some people hear that and think I'm saying psychedelics. I'm not. It's a play on words. It's psychedelist, like a violinist or a gymnast, someone who has a skill at something. Or it's a reference list of people who are skilled therapists or people providing safe access to legal materials within your jurisdiction, depending on where you're at. So go ahead and check out psychedelist.com. It's still under construction, but we are live. We're filling out the portion that has to do with the provider list, the facilities, retreat centers, things like that. You have access to the Safe Access now, which has to do with like microdosing mushrooms and South American plant medicines and those types of things. In the description, we'll be leaving an email for you guys to go ahead and send in any video content you might have, anything you'd like me to comment on, any perspectives you might want me to share on that stuff. Go ahead and send anything in, questions or any thoughts or comments you might have to that email.